Hey, today I'm going to be talking about the AWS Amplify Admin UI, which allows you to do backend web development in clicks. I'm Spitel. I am a senior developer advocate on the Amplify team. And so I get to work on this admin UI all day, every day, because I'm on the product team. So if you ever have any feedback or anything like that, reach out to me. I'm Spitel everywhere on social media. Feel very lucky to be able to work on this, by the way. It's a really cool tool. Our goals for this talk are to build a fun application, discuss the underlying services that are going on behind the scenes, and learn a little bit about Amplify. First, we're going to create some data. We're going to model out a backend. We're going to test locally. You don't need an AWS account at this point at all. And then we're going to deploy to AWS so that you can actually have it go out to the world. And then we're going to manage our data. We'll also add authentication as well, because that's something that I know takes a lot of developer work. So we're going to talk about how to streamline that process as well. So first, what is Amplify? It is a set of AWS tools for front-end and mobile developers specifically. And there's a lot of AWS services behind the scenes that end up powering this, but it's a little bit easier for somebody like me who traditionally doesn't work in the cloud and is more of a front-end developer. We started off with the Amplify CLI, which allows you to enable all of this through a command line interface, which meets developers where they're at. But we also wanted to make something that's even more accessible. And so we built this admin UI, which uses a visual interface to prototype and build out a full backend. This is production ready. It's not just a toy. It's all powered by AWS. You're getting access to the same services that you would if you were to use them directly. So full stack web development is evolving, and I've seen this in my career already. So originally the web was kind of static and it just had HTML, CSS, and then we added in some more dynamic data with things like PHP and Cold Fusion. And then there was the framework era, and this is really where I started out. There was this amazing video that the writer of Ruby on Rails DHH did, which showed building a blog with Ruby on Rails in 15 minutes. And it was this amazing, mind-blowing thing and really ushered in this framework era around 2005. And these frameworks made it so that building a web application was so much easier than it used to be. Instead of having to write every single line of code from zero, you could instead use these to build faster and write less of the code yourself. What 100 lines of code used to do could be done in a couple lines instead. More recently, and something that I'm really excited about, has been the serverless era. And I remember early in my career deploying things onto physical servers that were kept in our office. And it was a lot of work and a little bit out of my pay grade. Serverless allows you to not really worry about the server at all. And again, I've been playing around with this so much recently, where you can just put things out there and not worry about the server at all. So we've had these different eras and things have been evolving. And something that I'm really excited about in the future is maybe low-code development is next. And I think that this is a really scary term for a lot of developers, because it's like, is my job no longer going to exist? Are things going to be very different than they are now? And my thesis is no, that we're already in the phase of low-code development to an extent. We've already progressed further than writing everything from scratch for our web applications. We already have a lot of the tools for us. And so this next generation is going to just focus on making that even easier. No code is already a thing where people can use things like Squarespace to scaffold a website from scratch. And that hasn't taken our jobs. And I don't think that this will take our jobs either to any extent. In fact, things like Ruby on Rails made it so that there were more people who were able to be developers. And I think that low-code development will allow more people to be programmers as well. So it's going to broaden what we do, not narrow it. But I think the low-code tools that are going to be the most powerful are the ones that really integrate developers into the process. So they build trust with developers. They make it easy for developers to use. They meet developers where they're at. It's not some rudimentary system that the code breaks and isn't extensible. It's something that still extends and still scales and thinks about those extensibility use cases as a first-class concern. And again, what we're focusing on is making it so that what 100 lines of code used to do could now be done by one line of code. And I think in some ways, the less code, the better for a lot of applications. Code is really expensive. You need developers to write it. You need people to maintain it. And you can get some bugs from it as well. But having a web application that is fully extensible, customizable, and that the developer experience is good is still really important as well. And so we wanted to empower developers to do more with less code and to be able to develop in the easiest way possible so they can build things and have superpowers as developers. And I see this almost as an extension of the framework and the serverless eras of development. And again, the admin UI, which I'm going to be showing you in the demo, is not just a flimsy toy. It's backed by the power of AWS. You can build a full application using it, and people already are. So if you want to follow along, the sandbox that I'm using is at sandbox.amplifyapp.com. I did pre-record the demo because the demo gremlins come and get you at every moment. So these are going to be pre-recorded so I can jump over some steps. However, if you want to follow along, again, this is the URL, or if you want to check it out after, head there. So the first step is data, and we're going to create a database schema visually. Here's what it looks like when you head to that sandbox.amplifyapp.com, and you can click Get Started to create an app backend. We're going to pick data as the feature to set up, and I'll start with a blank schema for demonstration purposes. You can add in data models, for example, a course with a title and a description, and add a second model like video with a title and description as well. You'd also have an order so that you could have things run in that order, and you can choose from different fields as well, so integer or date time, etc. You can also make different fields required so that people need to add them in. You can also add a relationship in your data so that you can make it so that the courses and videos are related. A course would have videos, for example. Then if you go to test locally in your app, you'll be able to choose between the platforms to develop on. So for example, within web, you could do any framework. You could also choose between iOS and Android if you wanted to do something mobile. I'm going to do React for the sake of the demo because that's where I'm most comfortable, but you can create a React app. You could also scaffold a vanilla JavaScript app yourself. You could very much do that. Just for demonstration purposes, I got to pick one. And I feel like React a lot of people are comfortable with. From here, you're going to pull down that sandbox ID, which is going to allow you to link with this demo app. And all of this has been done without an AWS account. You do not need to have an AWS account. There's no danger of racking up billing at this point or anything like that. It's just all local. From there, there's some code generated for you. So you got to click and type in those fields, but that generated actually real code that you can use. So for example, there's this AWS exports, which is going to have your configuration information once you are deployed. This index TypeScript file is going to have your schema in it. The schema.graphql is a really good one to note because you can actually update your data schema in here and push it in order to go in that opposite direction. And then this is my React app. So again, you get to have the nice developer experience of typing in the fields and clicking, but behind the scenes, it's generating all this code that you can extend yourself and manipulate. Let's talk about some of the services that are being used here. The first is Amplified Data Store, which provides a programming model for shared and distributed data that is also available offline. So this data is stored in a database so it can be shared between your different users, but it's also stored locally in Chrome. It's in IndexedDB, for example. So it's available offline if you want to enable those use cases as well. This is especially useful for mobile applications, but also if you are enabling that within the browser as well. Another service being used is AWS Appsync, which is a GraphQL engine. I showed that schema.graphql file, and it has a GraphQL schema, which you can extend yourself and change if needed as well. That is Appsync. And then the database being used is DynamoDB, which is a serverless, NoSQL key value document database. It's pretty widely used, so you may have heard of it before. And knowing that these are the services being used shows you that you can really extend this yourself, and it's not just a toy by any means. And you can also extend the base functionality of Amplify using these as well. Okay, so the next step is we've scaffolded this schema, we've got our application set up. Now let's test out locally in our app. Again, this is before we have created an AWS account. So you can see that on this page, it's actually giving you code snippets generated for you. So it has a nice sample of what you want to do. I'm going to make it so that I have a button, and on that button click, it's going to open up a form to add a new course. Since I'm writing React, I need to follow into the React paradigm, but again, this could be vanilla JavaScript, this could be Vue, this could be Angular, this could be whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this function to add a course, and it's going to save that data to data store. This data store, again, is going to allow you to have that data be cross-user, but also have it be offline available too. I'm going to make it so that there's not videos related to the course at page load. So now I can click this add course, add a title and a description. And now I'm going to make it so that I'm using useEffect within React so that when my page loads, I pull in my courses. I need to have this function in a function for React reasons. You can't make the useEffect callback asynchronous itself. And you can go back to this to see the query sample code. So again, I don't need to write too much myself. You could also do the same for delete or update if you want to. It's got these generated code snippets that you can update for your use case. Then you can see that in my console, my data has loaded and I have my information about my 2 courses. So the next step is to deploy this to AWS. So again, with the sandbox phase, at any point you can go back in time and change your model and then rerun a pull to enable those updates. But this is all just local at this phase. It's just working on your computer. The next step is to deploy this so that any user could use it. And from this test in your app page, you can click this deploy to AWS button. Oh, that's just showing that you can go back to the model tab at any point. But from the test page, you can go ahead and either create an AWS account or log into your current AWS account. I have one, so I'll log in, but it'll guide you through creating one if you don't have one. Then you pick an application name. For example, video course fits what I'm doing here. And then a deployment region. This fits normal AWS regions. So usually pick the one that is closest to you or where you think your users will be. That'll take a couple minutes. I cropped this for sake of everybody watching, but then you can go to this data model page and manage your application content. You can also update your schema as well, but this offers a visual interface for adding data to this admin UI. I've found in my career that a lot of times you have to build a web app for the end user to use, and then you also have to build one for the content managers and the developers to use to manipulate the data that's being served in the application. And this kind of does that for you. So it's already pre-written, no code needed for you. You can use a Markdown editor, and you can also link to related data as well right within there. It also follows a model that kind of feels like Git in a way, where you can pull any changes that you made on the admin UI, and you can push any changes that you make locally. So if you write updates within your own code, you can run Amplify push to push those up to this admin UI and to have it deployed. And you can run Amplify pull in order to get those changes that you make on the admin UI locally. Also, I want to note that you can give users access to this admin UI if they do not have an AWS account. So say you want to give access to a content manager who might not be technical, you don't want them to update the data schema or anything like that, you can invite them by email and give them just those permissions. Or say you have a developer who doesn't have an AWS account and you want to invite them, you can also do that and give them full access to manipulating the schema and all of those actions. The next step is manage your app, and we did a little bit of that before when we were adding data using the admin UI. But you can also add authentication, which is something that I've spent way too much time implementing myself over the course of my career. So what you can go ahead and do is you can click Enable Authentication and add a login mechanism. So you can even add social authentication or via phone number, but email is the default. You can also enable multi-factor authentication. So you don't even need to worry about implementing that yourself. You can add additional attributes to get from your user, change the password protections policies, and then save and deploy. This will take a couple of minutes, and once it's done, you can run Amplify pull to get these changes locally in your app. And then this is installing the Amplify UI React components. This allows you to add some visual UI components to your application. So with Authenticator is a higher order React component. When I add that, it's going to require authentication whenever somebody tries to access my app component. You could put it at a different level in your application as well, but now they have full sign in, sign up, and all of that. So very little code to get authentication in your app, one line of code. And you can add users via this admin UI, or they can do it through that form as well. You can also create user groups. So if you wanted to create a group of admins, you could do that too. And back in the data modeling, and I think this is my favorite feature, you can click on your models and add authorization rules. So you can make it so that only the admins could manipulate data, but then anybody can read the data, for example. Then deploy the changes. So this is using Amazon Cognito, which has sign in, sign up, and access control for your applications. And it's using the Amplify UI React components, which I also demoed there. The other really nice thing is that Amplify has a bunch of other services. So for example, Amplify Add Storage would give you access to storing S3 data, or to use a DynamoDB table that's not controlled by our Appsync GraphQL. You could do a REST API via API gateway. You could add in a Lambda function by doing Amplify add function. So this is fully extensible using the Amplify CLI that already exists. And we're going to be adding more services to the admin UI as well. So if you have feedback on what you'd like to see, I'd love if you bubbled that up to me in some way, like DM me or put it on the GitHub issues or something like that. So if you're more comfortable using the command line interface, you can use that. Or if you're more comfortable in the visual interface, you can use that as well. So if you want to learn more, again, the link to get to that admin UI is sandbox.amplifyapp.com. If you want to read the documentation, docs.amplify.aws is the link for that. And I am a Spitel everywhere if you want to reach out to me about this or something else. The other thing I want to shout out is that we are hiring for a ton of roles. So if you want to be like me and get to play with this all day, every day, then you totally should and apply for those. You can go to amazon.jobs and search Amplify to see them or DM me. Thank you all for coming. This has been really fun.